Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Music Matters in That podcast. I'm your host Brian, and joining me today is the hip hop artist Diesel Clockwork. How you doing, brother?
Good man, how you doing?
Not too bad. I guess you're not gonna share your real name, or are we just gonna stick with Diesel the whole time?
You can go with Diesel. I go by Dimitri as well. Either way.
All right, that sounds good. Or I was thinking DD actually, to be honest, but I wasn't too sure. But uh, we'll stick with Diesel. I like Diesel because it kind of reminds me of like the old Thomas the Tank Engine show with the Diesels were always like the bad guys in a way. But actually, I would say I kind of like the colors a little bit too. So we'll stick with
Mhm.
Diesel. So how you doing? I guess where are you hailing from actually?
Oh, I'm from Maryland. I'm in the DMV.
All right, I guess you're
Mhm.
close to Baltimore, Indianapolis, any of those ones.
Yeah,
All right, that
they're
sounds
like
pretty cool.
the other way, but yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. I actually did have a couple of friends, and actually we played at Frostburg University way back in my college days, and I was going to say more in the western half of Maryland too, so
Yeah.
wasn't too sure, but just knew some friends who actually came out of there too, and it's pretty good to find somebody else in and around the Maryland area as well. My English is
Mhm.
getting terrible as we keep going along. That's the thing. So that sounds pretty good. So I guess tell us a little about yourself. I guess what sort of music do you do? And I guess where'd you get the name Diesel Clockwork? It has the artist name.
Yeah. So for a while, I wanted to do music, and in a way, I kind of felt like I didn't deserve it because I didn't feel like I was like naturally gifted, which was a misconception at the time. You definitely don't need to just be like naturally a talented musically just to start, especially if you're just doing it for fun or a hobby. But I had some other friends that were more musically inclined kind of encourage me and say like, you should just try it, like at the end of the day, like the worst case scenario, you just like have fun with it or you don't, and you just put it aside and it's not for you. But if you really want to try it, you should pursue it. And I agreed with them. And then I definitely knew I wanted to like pursue hip hop style of music just because that's mainly what I listen to and that's what I like to listen to and that's what I would like to make too. So I really just kind of wanted to make music that I enjoy. And from there, it was at first I was thinking I just wanted to produce. And then I was like, no, I think I want to do a lot more with it. I think I'd rather be more involved in the entire song creating process because I've also always been a pretty good writer. While I was in school, that was one of my strong suits. I would struggle in other subjects, but writing kind of came naturally to me without much effort. So I felt like songwriting it would be a new challenge to me really that I was really like looking forward to. So I kind of pursued it in that way. And then from there, once I really started to experiment with writing songs, I was like, oh, I actually like the way I sound. And a couple of my other friends, they could be lying, but like they're saying they like it. So I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna like go ahead and like create a whole artist out of this. And the nickname or the name Diesel Clockwork really started I knew I wanted it to start with a D because, well, I knew at work, at a restaurant I work at right now, I had coworkers that would call me Diesel because I would just work hard, I guess. And like, they would just say like, this guy like never stops. He's like a diesel engine. So I would always just kind of like, and I like that. And that's kind of how it grew from that. So I knew I wanted it to start with Diesel, but I didn't want it to just be Diesel. And I wanted it to be kind of like DC, since I'm so close to DC and I did grow up so close to DC. I wanted it to kind of be paying homage to that acronym as well. So I knew I wanted to be Diesel C something. And after like a week or so of thinking about it, I finally came to Clockwork. And it's kind of just a random word, but at the same time, I do like the way it sounds. So that's kind of how it happened.
I would say in terms of the Clockwork, I was thinking like Clockwork Orange, that old crime
Yeah,
drama and everything else.
yeah.
So
That's a movie.
it's an interesting movie too. I think it might differ a little bit from the book because I know one of my uncles was like real into it as well. So, but I would
I,
say in terms of, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I got to rewatch it.
Oh, really? I was trying to remember the actor's name, and I know Stanley Kubrick was the
Yeah.
director of it. Who was the main actor? The one who played the lead protagonist, we should say.
I honestly can't remember.
So you tell me. All right, but it's also cool with the DC since it's close to Washington DC as well, so that's a pretty good acronym too.
Hmm.
And I did forget to mention that when we first started here. Big shout out to Shroom T because he actually told me about you guys, especially
Oh, yeah.
the long list of like all the other rappers and hip hop artists you guys had on Spotify and everything too. So that's how I found out about you.
Yeah, he's super cool.
I guess did you show up on his show? I guess he does his own little interview series as well.
Yeah, I've been on there once, I believe.
I guess how is it? Because I think I might do an interview with him at some point.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, sounds like a cool dude. And I guess was making sure I didn't leave anything untouched right there, but all right, I think I did touch it right there. But I guess let's jump into your little project right here, because I was going to say about English class. Was that the class you excelled at? Because that seemed to be where everybody starts doing the writing and the long papers and everything.
For sure.
I would say all the other students turned to you to be the big source of inspiration or the big help or the wiki notes cheat sheet, as they would probably say. So
yeah,
I see. But I guess go ahead, talk about your project a little bit more if you want to elaborate. I guess you tried experimenting stuff like maybe incorporating guitars, like do like a Rage Against the Machine sort of kind of sound.
What project are you referring to?
I'm referring to Diesel Clockwork. Sorry, I wanted to say group, but I figure it's just you. So I guess.
Yeah. I guess when I hear project, it kind of always my brain always jumps to like musical project, so like an album or what have you. I guess. So are you trying to ask like what like inspires me, kind of like what kind of genre I kind of am in?
Yeah, along those lines. And because I think the song I listened to was Kettle Black from the Pursuit of the Pinnacle. So I guess
yeah, I have a lot of love. It's not mixed perfectly, but I do love the way that song came out, even though I think I definitely could have mixed it better in retrospect. I think generally my sound is constantly evolving. I know it started from when I first started rapping and producing in general. I really liked boom bop beats. So, and I knew that it was outdated, like a lot of old school hip hop is using those types of beats and stuff. But I just thought like the simplicity of it was super, like, I don't know, drawing to me, because it leaves so much room for you to explore with your vocals and stuff. So that's kind of how it started. And from there, it's just kind of evolved into more of, I like to incorporate a little bit of trap in there sometimes. Sometimes I like to explore more like of an emotional feel, like more R&B style stuff. Sometimes I guess a little bit of soul stuff, but I definitely need to like dabble in it a little bit more before I release anything under that kind of a genre. But generally I'm just in hip hop and boom bop for the most part.
That's kind of referencing back to the old days when they had the big boom boxes and everything too, or the cars that had the big springs on too, where they bounced up and down, kind of like what you see in LA. So was that what you were kind of into as well?
Yeah, definitely. Like the 90s rap scene is really big with me. Like Mobb Deep and Nas were definitely two of my huge inspirations when I first started.
Dr. Dre.
Dr. Dre too, yeah, he's great.
You know, I keep getting the stuff from Snoop Dogg as well, because I think I follow him, so I see like all his posts and everything too. And sometimes it's like random shit that like kind of pops up like every now and again, like here and there.
Yeah,
but a lot of it's like pretty comedic sort of things as well. So it's like, what the hell is all this even about? I'm sorry, I thought you said something there. I thought you were gonna keep going.
Oh no, I'm just saying Snoop Dogg's like everywhere nowadays. He still makes music, but like he's everywhere in marketing.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially at that halftime show last year's Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So I guess what'd you think of that?
I thought it was a lot of fun.
That's when they had Eminem, right? That was they had a little bit of everybody, yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I guess in terms of influences, I guess who would you say has been your biggest influence? And I guess if you want to list off any others, go ahead.
Biggest, my favorite musician of all time is Tame Impala or Kevin Parker. I've just always been I've never wanted to really dabble in his genre of music. I just like really like it. And I really respect the fact that he does everything himself. And that's kind of what inspired me in a way, because I wanted to try to do everything myself. So that's why I'm the one who's producing and marketing and writing and mastering and doing all of it myself, and slowly learning how to get better at all of these things at the same time. So he was definitely a big influence. But in terms of rap, I would definitely say Mac Miller is my biggest inspiration. But I have a lot of big inspirations other than him as well. Like I'd say A$AP Rocky is really up there, Kid Cudi, Joey Badass, Vince Staples. These are all like main pillars of like what I love to listen to, and kind of like the same type of stuff I like to make.
Joey Badass. I love it, dude. Actually, it's kind of catchy in a way when you think about it as well. So, yeah. You know, I was actually more exposed to like the Rick Ross. This is actually a friend of mine introduced me way back in middle school. It was like Rick Ross. It was Lil Wayne. pretty much usually much of big names like 50 Cent and Eminem as well. So of course I was more exposed to those guys. So I don't think I ever heard of Mac Miller. So I guess how'd you stumble upon Mac Miller's music?
I mean, I he was coming up when I was in like middle school, I think. So I started hearing him then, back when he was doing more like frat rap type stuff. And I wasn't big into him back then. And then I believe it was Faces. When Faces came out in like 2015, I was really heavy into that. But I still wasn't that huge of his fan. I just really liked the project. And then when 2017 came around, a couple of my friends were showing me, like, I think it was his feature with Anderson .Paak on Gang. That was the one that really got me, like, to start looking more in depth into his discography. And then I just fell in love with all of his music. He became a really big inspiration. From childhood, though, like, the first artist that impacted me, like, when I was in elementary school, would be Akon. That was the first CD I ever owned, was the Convicted CD by him. So he was definitely a part of my upbringing as well, and my interest in rap and hip-hop as a whole.
I would say, was your dad like a big collector of music as well? Was he the one to get all the vinyls, cassette tapes, and CDs?
He had a lot of records, yeah, but he was more so interested in country music.
Country? I would have thought he was more the classic rock star guys, because actually my dad was kind of in that too, and he kind of digs like the soul and blues as well, so I didn't know. Did he get into like any other genres, or was he just strictly country only?
It was mostly just country.
I tend to wonder what he thinks of. Try that in a small town with the Jason Aldean, that whole little controversy that's going around now.
Yeah, I don't know if he likes new country as much. It might be more like bluegrass stuff that he likes, and old early 2000s type stuff. Tim McGraw and Brad Paisley. None of the new guys as much.
Yeah, I think I've seen like some posts maybe were kind of like a little torn on the new country scene, as they would probably like to say it was as well. But I actually do remember being in Nashville when I saw versions of bluegrass. I don't know if they were doing covers or their own like original material. Those guys with like the big double bass and everything too, and they're like slapping it around, they're riding it as well. So
yeah, that must have been fun. Nashville is a music city.
Oh, you're missing out, man. It's so much fun on Broadway. I would say, I guess, do you dig rock and some sort of heavier music at times?
Yeah, totally.
So pretty much like every other genre. Okay, that's fine. I would say, yeah, there's a lot of bars, so you're going to be doing some bar hopping here and there too. So
yeah,
drink responsibly. That's what we'll say. All right. So big influence. I guess, are you self-taught? Did you learn everything in terms of like mixing, mastering, and all sorts of production?
I had one friend introduce me to Ableton, but everything else was self-taught. He just kind of showed me like which DAW he used, and that encouraged me to get that one. But it wasn't like, hey, here's how you do this, here's how you do that. It was more so just like, here's the one I use, and I was like, okay. And I downloaded like the light version, and then it's just been YouTube since then, just YouTube tutorials.
I actually did. When I was first starting off, like getting like checking out all the various DAWs, I eventually switched to Logic since I roll with Apple Computer. Are you a Windows guy?
Yeah.
Okay. And I actually did get the light version, and I also got Pro Tools' free version as well.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I think like Logic felt cheaper in a way. I don't know, like, is Ableton a little bit pricey?
Yeah, it's not super cheap, but I think it's pretty intuitive once you actually get the feel for it. It's not too hard to learn, and I think it has a lot more to offer, especially in terms of like stock plugins. I'd say they're definitely, I would say, the top two, but I haven't used all of the DAWs, so I can't really say that with complete confidence. But from what I've heard, this and what's the other one?
I mean, they say Pro Tools is the industry standard, and then
yeah,
I don't know what other ones, but I feel like Logic should be in the top 5 at least, because one, it is like, I was gonna say, one, it's like priced like pretty well. It's like only like $200, but unfortunately you have to have the Mac computer. But then you get like a good amount of stuff. I mean, there's something called Alchemy on there, and it gives you like a whole range of presets and sounds that you can just use to like really manipulate. Really helps out with your craft. So
minus to all of them. It's really just whatever you use. Most people are stubborn though, and once they get on one, they're not going to try to learn another one.
You know, I think I'm going to be guilty of that because
yeah, I mean, I am too. I know a little bit of Pro Tools and Logic, but not much.
I would say, yeah, the same thing with me, but I feel like I've been rolling with Logic. I really don't see really a need to kind of switch it up since, I don't know, I'm just comfortable, and I think getting out of that comfort zone is where it gets tricky. So
Yeah. I mean, I've been using Ableton for over 3 years now, and I still like know nothing in the grand scheme of how much it has to offer. Like I'm still constantly learning new things about it that I didn't know. Even like little things like hotkeys, like little hotkeys I didn't even know till recently for some things.
It's pretty much we just want to get right to a good point, and then as long as it's not bleeding or anything like that, we're happy with it.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what it boils down to. But I guess outside of Ableton, I guess what other sort of gear do you use? Because I think I noticed your microphone back there.
Yeah, got like a toner mic. It's actually a pretty cheap mic, but the quality of it is surprisingly good for the price that you pay. And then I just have like a Focusrite Scarlett, what's it called, solo thing to, what's it called? I'm blanking on the acronym for what it is.
I guess how big is it? Because I think of the 2i2.
No, like just the general term for like your processing thing.
Ooh, that's a good point. I'm not too sure. I think I'm blanking out on it too.
Yeah, essentially it helps with like the CPU overload. But yeah, it's a very, I think it's the cheapest one you can get. It's like Focusrite Solo. It definitely is limited. It doesn't have many like outputs for different XLR cables or anything. You kind of have to like plug and choose which one you want to use in the moment. But it's good for starting off, and with my short budget at the moment, it works fine.
Yeah, you always form a budget when you're first starting out too. Actually, do you work a second job, or is this like you're all in for this rap career?
I mean, I'm all in, but I've made no money from rap at all. It's been completely just hobby based for the most part. I mean, I'd like to make money from it eventually, but I completely understand why I'm not now. So in the meantime, I just work at a full-time job at a restaurant right now.
Oh, it's a restaurant you work at.
It's like a coastal inspired American food chain.
Chesapeake Bay sort of feel to it as well.
Yeah, there's definitely seafood in there.
I was gonna say, is it local or is it like a national brand?
No, it's local. It's called Coastal Flats.
I would say, yeah. I should ask, is it a family-owned restaurant? Because I actually worked in a restaurant as well as for like a second job.
I think one family owns the whole company of Great American Restaurants that it is like within, but it isn't like just one restaurant that a family. No, it's pretty corporate.
I see what you mean. I would say working in a small family-owned restaurant is at least cool because they're not like corporate or greedy or anything like that too. But like,
not exactly the case with my restaurant, but I've become accustomed to it, and that's kind of a environment I somewhat thrive in. I don't know why, but corporate stuff doesn't really bother me that much. I'm able to kind of blend in like a chameleon, I guess.
Well, then you are indeed a trooper. I'll tell you that much. So. All right, but in terms of like your music, I guess walk us through the process of like how you start with a song. So, do you start with the lyrics first, or do you set down a beat first and then go from there?
I would say I almost never start with the lyrics, but I do often. If lyrics come to me while I'm just going about life, I always write it down in the moment. Especially if it's like a certain flow, like I'll record it like with my camera or something if I want to memorize how I said certain things, and that'll be like a little baby idea that kind of will grow over time. Like I can start with something or just start with something as simple as one lyric. And then from there, it's just like a brainchild and it'll sit there until I have a beat that I really like, that I feel like it fits on. And then I'll revisit it and then it'll come back together. So a lot of times I don't start with the lyrics, although I do like writing a lot and I try to write every day to just either, if it's not my own beat, I'll write to somebody else's beat just for practice every day to try and just get stuff out and get better. But generally, I think I would start with a melody. Sometimes I start with drums, but generally I like to start with a melody and just kind of play with the keys until I find something that I like and then make it grow from there. Rarely, but sometimes I do start with like a sample as a loop. I'll change it up a bunch, maybe chop it up, maybe pitch it down or up, just do a bunch of random stuff to it and then add on top of that. I really like adding on top of samples and making them bigger than they were and just like taking a small part of something else and turning it into like this one big unit altogether. But it really is no like standard for me to be like, oh, I'm starting with the melody today, or oh, I'm starting with like the horns instead of the piano today. It's really just like in the moment what direction I want to go right then and there that makes me feel the most inspired to continue.
Also, it just pops in one day to be like, oh, like I go on my computer or someone with pen and paper. Pen and paper. Where's the pen and paper at? That sort of thing. Yeah.
I get beats though. I start by just like start. It's never like, I guess there is sometimes there's a beat or a melody in my head, and I'll have to write that down and then try to translate it through an instrument. But generally, a lot of times I don't have any melodies in my head, and I'll just open a DAW and just start playing around and like pick a random key.
I do have to ask first off, do you have like captain chords?
Captain chords?
Yeah, it sets up like the overall, how to explain it. It kind of helps like forming beats as well. So it like does it like in the key of A, for instance. It would set it up various chords, for instance. So it'd do like the main one that does a bass line for you. Then you can also, I think they now expanded it now, so it allows you maybe to also do like little drum patterns and stuff like that too.
Oh, interesting. No, I've honestly never did that. Kind of sounds like a little shortcut.
It does, and you know what? I kind of wish I did, but I just can't find time to actually use it. It is actually pretty cheap, and it does look really cool, especially with like some of the features they've at least added to it. So I think it really helps out for people in your genre too. So strongly recommend you check it out. So
yeah. Oh.
But I would say I always hate that too when you feel like you have some sort of music melody in your head and then you can't translate it for whatever reason, whether it is on pen and paper or on the DAW, for instance.
Yeah.
So I guess did you have trouble in the beginning, and then like how'd you overcome that?
Definitely had trouble in the beginning. Yeah. I guess it's really just trial and error though. Like just keep trying and trying not to get frustrated. Especially, it really does depend on the idea and how much you value that idea. Like if I put a lot of stock into an idea for a melody, like I'm like, no, this is too good to pass up. I'm going to keep doing it until I get it right and translate it perfectly. But if it's something that I made up in like 5 seconds and I'm like, I could probably just not use this and still be okay with letting it go forever. Sometimes I'll just let things go.
In other words, it actually is like actual writing, how authors do it, where you got like a rough draft and then you just keep editing until you finally get to that point. So,
yeah.
Because I guess since you say you were big into writing, I guess would you ever consider writing a book, whether it's a short story or a long novel?
Honestly, I've had ideas for books. I don't think I'd ever write like a biography because my life is not interesting enough, and it's hopefully far from over. Like I have a ton left, I guess, of like if it's going to be a biography type thing. But I've thought about writing books, but at the same time, it's from me noticing how hard it is to like grow in the music industry. I can't even imagine how hard it is to gain the respect of your peers when it comes to reading a whole book and getting someone to listen to a 2-minute song, much less read an entire book, sounds pretty hard. I think I would not be selling very many copies unless I already had some sort of name brand value to me that people were interested in.
Unless you were at the same level as Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and all those guys. So
yeah, unless I'm like up there somehow, there's no way I would consider writing a book.
I guess how was it during childhood? Because normally people then get like the misconception about Baltimore being like crime infested sort of hellhole, for instance. So I guess how was it growing up? Was there any sort of struggles in life?
I mean, there's struggles for everything. I grew up in a household with 3 older sisters, so I never really had like a big brother to look up to or to lead me. And I feel like my father was always there, but I don't think he was always emotionally there. And I didn't feel like he was always the best role model for me. So I guess that was hard. But in terms of like struggle compared to other people who have grew up in poverty or in way worse situations than me, like I definitely had it good. Like I had struggles that I guess I'm not willing to talk about today, but you know, like everybody has certain things that they grew up with that they didn't want to necessarily disclose or that were hardships they had to come over time. But I would say generally I had it pretty easy. I didn't grow up in Baltimore, so I actually grew up in a pretty crime-free county of Maryland. But yeah, generally I'd say I had it pretty easy. Like I can't complain about my upbringing, really.
That's good to hear. And sorry to get a little deep right there, but I always like to at least know people.
Yeah, definitely a lot of artists, especially in rap, that grew up in bad upbringings, and that's part of the reason that they became who they were, artists, and it made them stronger and all this stuff. I don't know if that's necessarily the case for me, but I have tons of respect for anybody that's had to go through that kind of struggle.
You know, I think it's also a stereotype these days.
Yeah.
At least that's what they seem to think, because you also think of NWA when they came up out of Compton and everything else. So I think like, oh, this guy must have came out of that sort of scenery or something like that too. So
Yeah.
but it is a good story. But I guess let's jump into COVID a little bit here. I guess how bad did COVID impact you?
COVID in a weird way was kind of good for my musically good for me, because with all of that free time, it's really what encouraged me to really invest in myself and be like, all right, I'm gonna really pursue music now. In 2019, I was definitely starting to put my feet in the water of music and like starting to experiment with making music. But it really wasn't until 2020 where I was like, oh, like I'm really going to do this now. Like this is so much free time. Like all of this time, I got to like use this. I could just do what everybody else is doing and like complain about how everything is closed and this sucks and like we can't see anybody we love and all this and that. But I was like, no, let's just like start grinding. Let's really start learning something new. And I had a lot of hobbies I picked up during COVID. I started to roller skate again, or rather rollerblade, which was a big part of like my childhood. And then I picked it back up now, and it's been a nice way to like clear your head. It's almost like going for a drive. Going for a skate is really nice. But generally COVID, I mean, I got COVID once, but other than that, it was kind of a blessing in disguise because it just gave me so much extra time to pursue music. And looking back now, I'm really grateful that that's what I did.
Absolutely. You know what? I've actually used that term when doing other interviews, saying like, was there some sort of blessing in disguise that COVID had given you?
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting. And I guess, did it help you expand into like social media? Like, do you have a YouTube channel or anything else like that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm on every platform, really. I don't think my reach is very big on most platforms. I think on YouTube, I have like 1,200 subscribers, and a lot of them aren't active, unfortunately. I've been trying to stay consistent with them, just post every week, but I don't know. Sometimes it feels like the algorithm is just not a great friend to me on YouTube. TikTok either, really. I think I get the most luck on Instagram for the most part, but I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on YouTube, Discord, all of them. Like, if Diesel Clockwork's pretty much on everything.
It's Clockwork everywhere else on the social media world too, so
yeah.
So I can see what you mean. And just trying to figure out, did breeze for a good bit here. I guess, well, if I go over some other questions right here, I guess, what challenges have you been facing recently as an indie artist?
I think time management has definitely been a problem and a stressor on my life. I would love to like commit all of myself to just making music. Like if I could do it for a job 24/7, I would be in my studio 12 hours a day at least, like just constantly grinding and trying to get better. But I don't have the luxury of having that much time because I have to make money. And since nobody for the most part knows about my music yet, I got to kind of just do it on the side. So a lot of my music is slowly being built at different times while I can do it. Like I'll start a rough draft of a song and then won't touch that rough draft for weeks sometimes because I'm working on other drafts at the same time. And I'll be like, I got a good system going where like everything ends up getting done eventually, but it's just at the wrong pace. Generally though, like I would say like, I don't have too much struggles other than the fact that I just wish I had more time to make music and more time to get better than I currently do. But yeah, I'm just still learning how to manage my time well and really commit myself fully to the time blocks that I have. It just sucks when like you don't have that much time to make music and you know like the 2 hour, you're like, all right, I have 2 hour block before work, let's try to squeeze in some stuff here. And maybe you have writer's block that day and it's like perfect, the one time I have time to make music I got writer's block. Or maybe you don't have writer's block and you turn on your computer and the computer's going super slow today and it wastes 30 minutes of your 2 hour block. Like that kind of stuff is really the only kind of struggles I've been dealing with music, is just trying to squeeze in my best quality production and music that I can in these very like finite time blocks that I have. Like the weekends are good for me. I can spend a lot of time making music. But yeah, generally that's like the only stressors in terms of music. Everything else is I'm just letting it happen as it happens. I'm not worried about getting huge or being recognized or everybody like loving my stuff. It's just more so like if it happens, it happens. This is my dream job. Like I hope it does happen, but at the same time, like I'm also just really grateful to make music and have the opportunity to live in the time period we do, where I can make music and it'll one day outlive me and my family will be able to hear my voice long after I'm gone. And I think in a way that's really beautiful, because a lot of families sometimes will, especially back in the day before phones and videos and all that, like you might forget what your loved one sounded like after a while. But I think with my music, it kind of immortalizes my voice a little bit, which I've always thought is very beautiful for all music in all genres, how people can put their heart into their passion of music, and it'll just live forever, and it'll inspire people for generations to come.
I would say, yeah, the beauty of the MP3s when they first like started coming out way back in the, what was it, late 90s, or was it more the early 2000s?
Yeah, maybe like late 90s, like the little MP3s.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit bigger than the iPod, but the screen was like itsy bitsy. It was like had like maybe 10 songs it could hold on it or something like that.
It was something like that. I honestly couldn't tell you, because I think when I eventually started like upgrading to like iPhones when Apple started coming out.
Yep.
I think I might have gotten the older ones, but that was, of course, the price was a lot cheaper because they kept going up and up and up in terms of like where the number was and everything too.
Yeah.
I think now the one I'm rolling with is the iPhone 14. So like we wait till after the price at least cools a little bit, and we let them go crazy with like all the newer ones that come out on an annual basis. So I did forget to ask that. I don't know if you had asked, I don't know if I had asked this, but I guess how did you and Shroom meet? Shroom T.
Oh, he just messaged me on Instagram. Yeah.
Just one day out of the blue?
Yeah, he just found me. I didn't find him first. It was more so he just found me and messaged me, started chatting like that.
Does he do like a little community, like with other, I guess where other rappers and hip hop artists can get together to chat and something like that, like on Discord?
So, because I have one friend of mine that also knows him, so, and he makes music, so I think he's definitely trying. If he doesn't already have like a collective he's building, I think he might be trying to.
I wish him best of luck going forward. So, good man. So,
yeah.
I guess some of the stuff you talked about during the challenges you kind of faced too, I guess. What sort of advice would you give to other indie musicians who are perhaps go through something similar that you're going through?
I would say there's a really good book. I can actually have it here that I've been reading ever since I started making music that always helps me when I feel discouraged or like, because everybody's going to go through those feelings where like they don't feel like they're like imposter syndrome, kind of like they don't feel like they deserve to make music, or they don't feel like the stuff that they make is good enough for them or for somebody else. Or it'll be things like you do make good music, people have told you make good music, but all of a sudden like you can't think of anything new, so you start like, being mean to yourself, or like saying like, oh, I just can't do it anymore, like I don't have it. That was a big thing for me to get over. And this book, which is by Julia Cameron, it's called The Artist's Way. I actually heard about it because J. Cole talked about it in an interview, and it's saying it helped him with writer's block. And it has like a bunch of exercises in it, and it has a lot of really encouraging and salient points in it that have stuck with me, to the point where I've just been like rereading it whenever I need like inspiration, or like whenever I need to kind of just like step back and give myself like a reality check of like, hey, like it's okay that you're not constantly pumping out these new ideas. Like this is normal. This is, not only is it normal, like this is part of the process. Like you need to go through these struggles of not being able to create something that you think is fresh or cool or whatever, because you need this time away to kind of just like get everything out and then start new again, kind of. So I think my advice to like people in my same, or people that haven't even started making music yet, is to just try to have fun with it and just make what you like to make. And don't try to make music that you think other people will like. You should just try to make music that you like to listen to and that you like to share. And you don't have to share it with the world, but I think that everybody that makes music should consider it. I have way too many of my music friends that have nothing out or nothing available online. It's just all like, which is fine. Some people just like to do it for fun. And I'm not saying that's wrong at all. I just think it also helps you to grow if you can get. But this book, yeah, especially this book, I would say anybody that's struggling with anything related to any of your passions, doesn't even have to be music. It can be writing. You could be a screenwriter. You could be someone who just wants to draw, any art form at all. This book is really, really good for encouraging you. And like, especially when you're feeling down about yourself or about your art, it's really good for just reminding you, like, this is all normal. These are all normal feelings. Like, don't throw everything away. Like, just wait till tomorrow. That type of stuff. So yeah, I would really recommend The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron.
Can you just hold the book up to the camera again, real quick?
Yeah.
There we go.
She was actually ex-wife of, I believe, Martin Scorsese.
Oh, really? That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. I thought it was James Cameron at first because her name's Julia Cameron, but no, I'm pretty sure it's Scorsese.
Yeah, I think if they do get divorced, I think the woman goes back to her maiden name. So
yeah,
but I think I can see what you mean too. I think I would have thought the same thing related to James Cameron. Oh my gosh, that sort of thing. But that's pretty cool. And I would say you end up being your worst critic in a way. So that's why. So unfortunately, that's what happens when when you try to you end up getting the writer's block and everything too, or something bad happens, or you just really feel like you can't do it. You lose that motivation too. So
yeah. It's really good for people that are afraid to start. That's a big thing for a lot of people. Oh, I would do this, but this is holding me back. Or it's just a bunch of excuses. Or I would do this, but I don't want to be judged. And it's you're the only one that's putting these constraints on yourself. So just do it. If you want to start something, yeah, you're going to be bad at first, but be willing to be bad. Be willing to be brave and just be bad at something until you get better. That's just how you do it. That's how it has to be done. Be bad at something until you learn how to be better.
In a funny sense, it's kind of it's good to be bad, that sort of thing. So,
yeah.
Even though it's kind of meant to be the other way around, as they sometimes do in the movies with the bad guys, that sort of thing. So,
yeah.
All right, but thanks for sharing that too. That's actually pretty cool. So, strongly recommend that to anybody who has not gotten it yet or is struggling with their own creativity. So, did you get that off Amazon, or where'd you get that?
I think so, yeah. I think I got it off Amazon.
All right, sounds good. So, I forgot to ask this about your lyrical content, I guess. What inspires your lyrics? Do you do real life events, or is it just something that comes around one day?
It really will just kind of depend. It'll be a lot of random stuff. Sometimes it's more related to me. I would say more often than not, especially the introspective lyrics, those are almost all going to be related to me in one way or another. And then a lot of my lyrical wordplay is kind of just having fun with it. So there's definitely some embellishment in there. I'm obviously not constantly carrying a gun and all that kind of stuff. But I do try not to feed into that stereotype that, oh, I have to rap about selling drugs and robbing people and having sex with girls. That's always been a big part of when I started, I wanted to be away from. And especially when it comes to girls and disrespecting women and stuff, that's something that misogyny is a big thing in hip hop. And I don't know. It's to me, it's just kind of overdone. The way that I don't think any bars I've ever heard that have been related to sex in any way have been oh, that's hard. To me, it's more just why do we have to talk about this always? Why does this have to be the one crutch bar that every rapper leans on, where it's just I don't know. It's just not creative to me. I mean, sometimes I guess they're a little bit more creative than others, but generally I'm my mom might listen to this. I don't want her to hear that kind of talk, really. It's just, it doesn't really inspire me at all. So that's one thing I've always been pretty adamant about, is I'm not going to involve disrespecting women, and I'm not going to try to contribute to the ongoing misogyny of rap. But I'm also I'm not trying to say anything's wrong with it. I'm just saying I don't want to, there is something wrong with misogyny, but I don't want to rap about sex personally. So that's a big part for me. Everything else though is pretty much on the table. It's really whatever inspires me in the moment, or whatever I've been writing down lately. It just kind of leads from one thought to the other. That's kind of how my lyrics develop. It's never a set thing though. It's not I need to talk about this, because if you put too much constraints on your songs, then it's harder to write. It has to be about this topic, and then all those good bars that could have fit in no longer fit because they have to fit the mold of the song. And so that kind of thing. Generally, I just have some things that I don't like talking about. So sex is one of them. I'd say gang stuff. Obviously, I'm not in a gang. I'm not going to pretend I'm in a gang. And I don't know, maybe getting money and flexing brands. I do put it in sometimes in my songs, but it's more so to kind of poke fun at the idea of I don't think it makes you cooler because you wear a name brand or a designer brand. It's clothes are clothes at the end of the day. That kind of stuff. But generally, yeah, there's no real restrictions on what I write. It's just kind of what happens in the moment.
I would say I think I kind of see where you're going with in terms of some of the lyrical content, because I I think I remember seeing like some of the music videos back when we going on demand, and of
Hmm.
course you always had a lot of women in there. They were dancing and all that sort of thing too. So I think I see what you mean. And in terms of like the constraints, in terms of lyric wise, I think we know about Ice-T since he was in NWA. And then
Yeah.
afterwards, he formed his own little metal group that did like songs like Cop Killer, for instance. And you figure like, damn, that is dark, man. That sort of thing. So it's like,
I like that kind of stuff though. Like I like dark lyrics. I don't, especially if they're not true. Like I just think it's kind of fun. Like Tyler the Creator used to do a lot of it back in the day, where he would just like rap the most like gory, lyrically like detailed stuff, and it would sound good and it would be like crazy. I think Yonkers is a good example of that, where he's just like describing like how he's like murdering this person and like putting their body in his back seat and all this type of stuff. I think those are more so like not like, oh, that's so hard, more so like it's just kind of funny because it's so out there. So like sometimes I like those kind of stuff just because it's like he's got to be joking. Like none of this could be real. And in that way, I like those. I just don't like the ones where they're just like women exist for men's happiness, like women are objects for us, our pleasure, like that type of shit. Obviously, no one's rapping that. That'd be corny, but to the effect of that, certain things that they say where it's just like overdone. I get it at first, like where how it inspired people in the beginning, like, oh, like that's hard, like he's disrespecting her, that's dope. But like it's just been so overdone and overused where I'm like, I think we can create more creative lyrics than this. We don't need to just always talk about things that don't need to be talked about at all.
I do have to say my knowledge of the rap and hip hop community is a little limited because I've always been like the metal and rock sort of guy. But it's funny when you mention about the gore stuff too, because usually a lot of metal tends like delve into that as well. But like the one that seemed to really propel it was Cannibal Corpse out of New York. And in the beginning, it was just so bizarre. It was almost like it actually sounds pretty good, but at the same time, I'm hoping this is false, that sort of thing too. So, so I can see what you mean too. And it's like,
did you listen to Limp Bizkit?
You know, I do know some songs from Limp Bizkit, yeah, and
they have kind of a metal style to them, and some of their lyrics were kind of like that too. Like Break Stuff is kind of like that.
It was Break Stuff and up. I was trying to remember some of the lyrics too, because I think during like one of the breakdowns was something, say chainsaw or something like that, and
yeah,
and then I think what I always think I love the lines was like, best bet is to stay away, motherfucker, that sort of thing.
One of those days.
I would say they were a bit more rappy than like Linkin Park, but it seemed like they were kind of molding like Linkin Park sound.
Oh, for sure.
But I think everybody liked the. I was trying to remember. I think Rage was first. Rage Against the Machine was first. That seemed to be like the first one that did the rap rock sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, partial thing was Slipknot. Maybe more so in the beginning. Maybe not so much like afterwards.
Yeah.
There was maybe a couple songs there, and then Linkin Park seemed like kind of break into that fold a little bit. It had a little bit of metal, but it was more rock oriented with like the hip hop.
They had that with Jay-Z when he hopped on it.
Oh yeah, the Jay-Z one that came. I think they came before Minutes to Midnight. I think they
might have been in the end.
They did in the end, but I remember one. They actually did a Numb. That was right. They did one.
Yeah.
The What the Hell Are You Waiting For? That one that Chester was singing. Yeah, that was actually pretty cool, I would say.
Yeah, I agree.
But then there was also the Killer Bees, right? They had also teamed up with Anthrax at one point, right?
Yeah, if I remember correct, yeah.
So yeah, you tend to get a lot of the rap and rock kind of molding together at times too. So that was always interesting.
I've always been a fan of people that aren't afraid to kind of genre bend a little bit and just kind of dip their feet in different things. Because personally, I haven't been able to really try that yet. I also don't want to try it yet. I still think I have a lot of room to grow within just one genre. Like I don't think I need to go outside of the genre, like unless it's something close by, like R&B and hip hop are very close, and soul and hip hop are kind of close too. But like I'm not right now, at least in my current artistry in my career, I'm not trying to move from something like rap into like metal or country or pop. Really, I'm more comfortable just where I am right now. I'm still learning a lot, and then down the road, I think, yeah, eventually I think there's going to be a lot of genre hopping, just kind of trying new things, challenging myself.
You know, I was getting ready to ask that question. Would you consider doing something like a Rage Against the Machine or Linkin Park? So, yeah. All right, you at least answered that one. So that's off to you, and good luck to you.
Like effort, and I don't know if I'm capable of it yet until I've gotten more accustomed to just like owning the one genre, you know?
Absolutely, too. In other words, I think it's like getting outside your comfort zone too. So pretty much, you're used to rap and hip hop at this point, so that's pretty much where you want to start off with, and then build your craft from there. So
exactly, and I'm not trying to box myself in. I don't always want to be just in the hip hop realm, but for now, as I'm still learning and developing and getting better, I definitely want to stay where I'm at.
absolutely, good luck to you, mate.
Yeah, thank you.
But I guess for this question right here, I don't think I gave it to you, but what do you love most about music?
I think I kind of already said it with the fact that it outlives you. I've always found that to be just really, really beautiful concept, that no matter what happens, if no one likes it, it's okay. Like, the people that care about me will be able to go back and listen to my music long after I'm gone. And I also definitely have an interest in inspiring the next people that want to make music. I don't think I'm there yet, where I don't think I make inspiring music necessarily yet. I'm still getting better, but I do seeing my music inspire somebody else's art. And I guess the only way to really know if it does is to hear it from the source themselves. Like, oh, like I was listening to you, like when I was coming up, like this is a big reason why I made this. Like, that would mean a lot to me is in music. But generally, what I love most about music is just being able to create and express yourself through a different outlet than just spoken word.
I think most people use the term, or at least along the lines of therapy, for instance.
For sure, yeah, it could be therapeutic.
In terms of like, I guess any sort of struggles they have. Normally, it's like stress after a long day, for instance. Normally, they're just listening to the music, or they get on their instruments. In my case, drums, and then just kind of, quote unquote, burns the stress away, that sort of thing too. So,
for sure, I think there's a difference for me the way I look at music, where it's like what I love about making music versus what I love about like just music in general. Like, just listening for sure is therapeutic. Like, I don't always listen. I like to listen to anybody else but myself for the most part, because it's going to be fresh. It's going to be something I haven't heard, or it's going to be something that can inspire my own art. So, and I definitely have times where I'm like, ever since I started making music, it's kind of weird, because like you start to go back to how you used to enjoy music, and you catch yourself like analyzing the song when you didn't before. After you started making music, kind of, it feels like sometimes you overanalyze it, and it can kind of like remove the value of the song a little bit. Like, you'd be like, oh, like why is this part in this song? Like, why is this instrument going? Or like, I don't like the high pitched noise in the background now that I've noticed it. That type of stuff. But generally, like, music has always just been a really nice escape for me as well. Like, I always listen to music whenever I'm driving, and whenever I'm like working out, I like to listen to music too. It's always just been a really big part of my life growing up.
I would say you were one of those people who would blast the bass in their car and everything.
No, I'd blow my speakers out if I tried.
I would say that's a good thing too, but man, it is so annoying. Especially if I take my walks downtown, it's like boom, 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 that sort of thing.
Yeah, that and the loud engines that just like bark. How often they're revving. They just rev until it pops. It sounds like the car's farting, and they're like going nowhere. It's like 5 miles down the road that they're not even like at 60 yet, and their car is like so loud. It's like the same type of like having two huge subwoofers in your back and all the windows down.
And stuff like that, but the way you kind of described it too is almost like what motorcycles do with their exhausts. They kind of, I don't want to say poke holes, but I think they put holes in the exhaust pipe there, and that's why you hear the motorcycles be like, that sort of thing too. So
yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely too. All right, so we did breeze through a good amount of questions, so let's jump into some of the fun ones here.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So, what is your favorite food?
I would say I like pasta a lot. Maybe some sautéed shrimp would be like my go-to.
I would say careful when you go to Italy, because when I got a seafood pasta there, they didn't peel the skin off the shrimp right there, or the membrane. So unfortunately, you have to get your hands dirty for that stuff. So
yeah.
Just a word of advice when you go to Italy or want to get a seafood pasta from there. So, all right. And what is your favorite movie?
It's a tie for me between Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith and Interstellar with McConaughey.
I guess what made you pick those ones?
Pursuit of Happiness is just a very good story. It's a very true story, and it's based on a true story, and it's just really sad, but it also like touches on a lot of real concepts that people have been privileged not to live with, and it really just gives you a lot of perspective of how much worse your life could really be, and no matter how hard you're working, sometimes it's still just and it's an incredibly immense task to climb out of a hole when sometimes people are just dealt a bad hand, and life is just not fair. So I think that is a really salient point of the message of the film. And then Interstellar, I'm just a big fan of space, and I just think it's a really impressive and well done movie.
I would say Matthew McConaughey always does a nice job in whenever he does his movies too.
Yeah.
And I have not watched it, but I think I had asked for a DVD for Christmas, and unfortunately, I think it's been sitting there the whole time. So I have to get it on at some point. I do know what you mean about space, but I always blame Star Wars for kind of getting me into the whole space thing too.
Oh yeah, love Star Wars too.
All right, and what is your favorite drink? Alcoholic drink and non-alcoholic drink?
Alcoholic drink, probably a mojito. Maybe I also like Captain Morgan and Sprite. I think that's a really underrated combo. It's kind of like a rum and Coke. Non-alcoholic, I like soda, I guess, is pretty good. I like Dr. Pepper's pretty good.
You're a doctor too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know what? They haven't done those commercials a whole lot recently. It was like, trust me, I'm a doctor. Those ones. I kind of should bring those back. So.
There's a lot of good commercials that they just don't do anymore. Like I haven't, have you noticed how like gum commercials just don't happen anymore? Or at least not as often? But back in the day, it was like always 5 gum or like Orbit, like the Clean It Up with Orbit one, or like how it feels to chew 5 gum.
I think I'm always getting mixed up with like I think it's Febreze. No, not Febreze, sorry. Fuck, what was it? It was the one with a unicorn in it or something like that too. I think they were doing something like that. I don't know if it was gum. I don't know. I think it might have been like those little little tablets they had there or something like that.
Yeah.
But
there's like
like fresh breath.
Like that.
Yeah, I know what you mean too, but I'm trying to remember a whole lot of the other commercials too, because a lot of them like seemed like just fell off the face of the earth after a specific period of time.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know. I can't stay in charge of marketing campaigns or anything like that. So
yeah, I probably nostalgia. I don't actually miss them.
But is there like a certain point you'd be like, damn, did you ever know what happened to that place or whatever happened to that little commercial I was talking about?
Yeah, like the Geico caveman commercials, that type of stuff, where it's just
so easy a caveman can do it.
Yeah. At this point, it's nostalgia based. Like I would never miss a commercial for any reason other than like missing my childhood.
Yeah, absolutely too. But it's also the same with the cartoons as well. So I guess since we just talked about that, I guess what was your favorite cartoon?
Favorite cartoon? That's a good one. I really loved cartoons growing up. I would say my favorite was probably Static Shock. I don't know if you ever saw that one. It was like a DC superhero. I think they're trying to make a live action version of it. But I always thought that show was super underrated and fun to watch.
You know, I do remember Static X, and actually the one episode that came to mind, which was actually dramatic, I should say. I wasn't going to say traumatic, but it was dramatic in a way because there was one kid that was getting bullied, and I think Static and his friend, they were trying to help him out, and unfortunately the kid got bullied so much he brought a gun to school, and he shot someone. He didn't kill anybody, but I mean he was threatening his bully, that sort of thing too, and that's pretty cool. But I guess for the final one here, what is currently your favorite song?
I'd say it's probably, I got 3 songs that come to mind. I've been listening to the new Travis album, the Utopia album. I think it's called Schizo off that one. That one's pretty good. I've been bumping that recently. And then I've been bumping some older rock and older Tame Impala stuff. So for Tame Impala, I would say Beverly Laurel is one that's been in rotation for me. And then the third favorite song at the moment is There's a Light That Never Goes Out by the Smiths.
Oh my god, I remember that one. Actually, I used to play that song a lot in my uncle's car because it was actually a greatest hits album. And I think that was the final song from that album too. So
yeah.
That one was always fun. All right, so Diesel, we're nearing the end of my podcast right here. Did you have any questions for me or any final words you want to say before we jump into the final one?
No, nothing right now.
I'm gonna say it's gonna come later too, but all right. All right, so
Yeah.
the last question right here, this is one I always like to ask, but given what COVID has done, I think people need some sort of hope these days in order to get back on their feet per se, especially for musicians like yourself who are also trying to make, trying to break into the scene or maybe also maybe make a name for themselves out there. So the last question goes like this: what sort of message of hope could you give to musicians and people out there?
I would say that we are all very fortunate to be living in the time that we are, even though there's unfortunate things going on around us. In terms of living in the digital age, where, you know, if this was the 90s or maybe even the early 2000s, like it was much harder for anybody to be able to make music and release it to the public. But since the dawn of streaming has come out, yes, it's definitely taken money out of artists' pockets, but it's also given a huge opportunity to small, run-of-the-mill people to just be able to make their own music that anybody can listen to, which we did not have the luxury of doing if we were in any other time period. You had to have a recording contract with the company. They had to like really be backing you and believe in you. You could be a great singer, but like you could not get your music out there without a lot of capital to do so. And nowadays, with streaming, you can pretty much music for $20. It doesn't cost much. If you're a kid, especially, like it's like $20 a year or something to have your music on a streaming platform. So I think that should definitely be there. There's no reason if you want to pursue music in today's day and age that you shouldn't just go ahead and do it. If you have a computer or even your phone, people can make music on their phone now, which is such a luxury that we did not have back in the day. And I think that offers a lot of hope to anybody that wants to start making music. You have the tools at your disposal. They're just waiting for you to try. So just don't be afraid to try.
Spoken like a true prodigy. So, all right, that's pretty good advice right there. And you are right about the phone too. Actually, I think nowadays it's more like the iRig. That's a little device they use that plugs into the. Well, maybe not this phone here because this one doesn't really have like the headphone jack as like some of the other ones do. So, unfortunately, I think you have to stick to using like either an old iPhone or something else in order to use it nowadays too. But I see what you mean too. So, thank you so much, Diesel. All right.
Yeah, thank you so much for chatting with me, Brian.
No worries. So we're at the end of my podcast right here. I guess, did you have any shout outs or any final words you want to say before we close?
No, just shout out to you for doing this. I really appreciate getting the chance to talk to you today.
No worries. And everyone, my guest today was Diesel Clockwork, aka Dimitri. Make sure you go hit him up on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever he's on. Also hit him up on Spotify. Are you on Bandcamp as well?
I don't know if I'm on Bandcamp. It's possible. You could check. I think if DistroKid uploads to Bandcamp, it might be, but I haven't specifically gone there myself and done it yet.
I use DistroKid too, so yeah, that really comes in handy. So
Yeah.
So go hit him up. I know he's definitely on Spotify, so anyone else can attest to whether he's on Bandcamp or any of those other ones too. So
SoundCloud, all of them, yeah.
All right. Diesel, thank you again so much again for coming on. Stay safe.
Yep, thanks.
Stay tuned, y'all.
See ya.